Hey, what's up guys, Sir Emanon here, and welcome to another episode of Road to 1000 DuelingBook Rating. So this is going to be day 2 of me testing the Trap Shaddoll deck, and we're going to be up against Traptrix today, so this should be pretty interesting in terms of, promoting some back and forth interactive gameplay that you guys seem to enjoy with the last episode versus Paleozoics. If you guys haven't seen that episode or just want to catch up with the rest of the series overall, definitely go ahead and check out the link to the playlist. I will leave one in the description box below, as well as in the top right corner of the screen if you want to check that out. But yeah, this is a very fun deck. I've been having quite a lot of fun with it, but I'll continue to say this. I'm not very good at the deck as far as just the very detailed intricacies of it. I'm competent to a point, but of course, there's always more to learn, which is the point of the series. So that's going to be pretty exciting as we kind of progress here. So we're going to move into the deck list real fast before we get started. And this isn't really any fundamentally different from the last episode here. I did swap out a copy of Ariel for a Trick Clown just to see if the light comes up for Shaddoll Fusion. But speaking of which, I'm still not convinced necessarily that this is the best way to go as far as maxing out in this build, just because it does conflict with punishment quite a fair bit. And also, again, like when you're going first, if you don't open a lot of Shaddoll monsters to pair with this, then this card can be dead until the grind, which again, this deck excels at, but there's cases where this can be a bit dead. But if you play more Shaddolls to sort of accommodate the Shaddoll Fusion, then you can end up with really clunky hands with a ton of normal summons. So it's a really strange sort of deck building paradox, and I'm not sure how to fix it yet, but I do want to, of course, play around with them at least and give them a chance, because as one of the commentators mentioned, I don't want to, have a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy where I just immediately cut these and then just never play with the fusions at all. So definitely want to at least experiment with them and then see if I end up liking them or just want to cut them later. So that's up for experimentation. But the side deck, of course, you don't have to worry too much about, and the rest of the deck is kind of just the same. So we'll move on into the replay here without any further ado. So we're going to get started here, and like I mentioned, we're up against Traptrix, which is a matchup that I'm very unfamiliar with, and you'll see that play out in game 1 here. Definitely, that's going to show quite obviously. So we do win the RPS, and we're going to opt to go first here, which is very good, of course. So we're going to open a copy of Punishment, Ice Dragon's Prison, Schism, Dynamiscus, and Shaddoll Fusion. So again, this is kind of alluding to the idea that this is not live turn 1, but when it gets to the grind, it's nice. But even in certain matchups, like Drytron, they can just negate it with Ultimateness, or sometimes they don't even end on an extra deck monster. Or you have stuff like Eldritch builds, depending on which one, of course, that sometimes just don't make this live. So it's a bit of a toss-up at times. But we are going to just set our traps and pass. I should have left the Schism in hand. I'm not really sure why I did set it. It wasn't live anyways, because the only way to get Shaddoll monsters in grave was going to be the punishment, which locks me out of using Schism anyways. So I probably should just use it as pitch fodder for Dynamiscus and then made sure that my Shaddoll Fusion was not going to be the discard there. But my opponent goes and normal summons a copy of Myrmelio. And then that's going to grab a search for a Gravedigger's Trap Hole, which is going to be quite nice in this matchup since the burn does add up and it's recyclable via Dianea and stuff. And here I made the biggest misplay of the entire game, which is not responding to that window when the Myrmelio was still on board and letting my opponent just go straight up into Sarah. So I missed the most important text on this card for this matchup, which is that this Link Summon card is unaffected by trap effects. I totally forgot that this card had that effect, so that's why I did not, just immediately shotgun my Punishment or my Dynamiscus. Definitely should have, in hindsight, because of the fact that, of course, now my opponent is going to punish me harder with the Parallel Exceed that they drew. And now I'm not able to interact with this in the way of trap cards, where, normally cutting off the arrow would prevent Exceed from resolving fully. But we're not able to do that, so my opponent is going to, of course, resolve the Parallel Exceed here. Now, I, again, decline to use this window to interact here, because I do have a reason this time around, and it's that I'm suspecting my opponent opened a copy of Shade Brigandine, since I do know that that card is very common in the deck, and that is typically a 3F in a lot of builds that I've seen in the past. It's been a while since I even looked at this deck, which you'll see in a bit later as we get into this game here. But they overlay for a copy of Rafflesia, and then they do actually have the Shade Brigandine, like I mentioned, so my opponent would have gotten to a rank 4 regardless. So I felt okay about that. But off the Shade Brigandine, they're going to then trigger the copy of Traptrix Sarah. That's another reason as well why I didn't want to flip up a trap, because I didn't want to, banish a Parallel Exceed off Dynamiscus, but then my opponent gets to summon a Traptrix monster anyways, and then blow up my back row off Myrmelio. So I was hoping okay, maybe the most I can do is a rank 4, but not have the Shade Brigandine. That would have been the best case scenario for me. But of course, didn't pan out. So my opponent's going to get the Myrmelio anyways, and then pop my middle set, which thankfully happened to be the Schism, which was the dead one. So we let that go. And I did have another window to interact here, which I definitely should have, because the Sarah effect for the normal trap card effect is already used. So I probably should use the Ice Dragon's Prison to banish these two, but I wasn't really thinking about that at the time. In actuality as well, I think at this point just trying to see what my opponent's deck did, because I didn't even know this card existed. I had to like look at this card. I'm like, wait, is this card like real? Because I didn't actually know about this card at all. I actually have no idea what set this card came out in, so if you guys want to let me know about that one, definitely be sure to do that. But yeah, this card definitely is a pretty good one, but my opponent and I both resolved this incorrectly. So what happens here is my opponent declares Allomeris here, and then my opponent says, all right, Allomeris effect, target Myrmelio. This does not target. This actually just attaches, you declare it, and then in resolution, you resolve it if there's applicable, monsters left in graveyard. So what I do is I use Ice Dragon's Prison. I say, okay, I'm going to target the Myrmelio that you targeted, and then banish both it and the Allomeris. But that's not how that works. What my opponent should be able to do here is just resolve it and bring back the other Myrmelio. And then that would pop one of my back row, which definitely would have been relevant here, forcing out one of these two, because these were my strongest traps left. So my opponent, I guess, didn't know about the interaction either, but I just straight up was not familiar with this card, and I did not read it correctly. So, that is the classic pitfall of Yu-Gi-Oh players and not reading properly. So that is my fault. I definitely should have been more careful there. But that definitely can happen when you're running into rogue decks that you're not familiar with, and that is a lesson that I have learned for the future. So I apologize that this was not the way this was supposed to go, but what can you do at this point, right? Except learn from the mistake. So we're gonna learn and move forward from it. So my opponent's going to go and set a copy of Traptrix Shaddoll Nightmare, since my opponent did use the Traptrix Allomeris effect. That's off the Sarah, of course, that set card was. So I know that there's Gravediggers as well as the Traptrix Shaddoll Nightmare I have to be wary of. And then we're going to go ahead and take 800 in the battle phase. And my opponent is going to set 3 and then pass. For turn, we draw a copy of Reshaddoll Wendy. And then my opponent is actually going to flip up a copy of Anti-Spell in the standby. But we do have the Dynamiscus to be able to answer it. So again, that Myrmelio definitely could have changed things. Definitely would have changed things, actually. But that's in the past now, so can't do a whole ton. Now, we do get rid of the Anti-Spell via the Dynamiscus, and then we try and activate Wendy, since, of course, Dynamiscus does not discard for cost. It does discard for effect, so Wendy does trigger. But my opponent ashes it. However, that does pave the way for me to activate the Shaddoll Fusion very freely, so we get to do so. And we're going to go for Construct. Now, I know my opponent has both the Gravediggers that was searched off of the first Myrmelio, as well as the Traptrix Shaddoll Nightmare that was set off the Sarah, and I know where it's located. So I'm going to try and chain in a way where my opponent's not incentivized to negate anything. So I'm going to go Construct Chainlink 1, Skolmata Chainlink 2, and Trick Con Chainlink 3. Because I actually don't really need the Trick Con to resolve necessarily. At this point, I just want to get resources and try and crack my opponent's board a little bit. So we send Resh and Dragon. I really like Resh in sort of grindy matchups, because being able to just loop like Construct like forever basically is really, really good. So like that's a wall that's really tough for these types of decks to get around, and you eventually can just be able to outgrind. So I do like it for that purpose. That's why I wanted to get in circulation as much as possible. And my Wendy already got negated, so I couldn't like use her again or attempt to use her again. So we're gonna go for Dragon Effect, and we're gonna hit one of the unknowns, because I figure that this is a pretty decent time to do so. So we're just going to force out my opponent's Gravedigger's Trap Hole, which my opponent is going to use to burn me. And we are going to then watch as our opponent goes for a Sarah activation off of that. They could have actually done that off my Dynamiscus, come to think of it. And I also got to chain Dynamiscus to the Gravedigger's Trap Hole. In actuality, I actually forgot about the Dynamiscus there, but we're going to be using it a bit later. But yeah, again, there's kind of like a lot of mistakes on my end. This is not super characteristic. But that definitely happens when I'm trying to like focus a lot on like what my opponent's cards do. So yeah, definitely can happen when I play against Rogue. So yeah, Myrmelio is gonna go and pop the punishment, and I'm gonna chain it, which kind of sucked because I did want to link this away and get back the Resh. And here I actually think I targeted Myrmelio or attempted to, but Rafflesia prevents targeting. Except for the Rafflesia. So I have to, of course, target the Rafflesia as the only legal target. But of course, this is unaffected by trap effects. So yeah, it would just not resolve as far as the pop is concerned. But I do get the send. So because it sends first and then destroys. So at least I still get to have the Entus. Yeah, that was like me like targeting. I was like, oh, I thought I targeted it with the punishment, but then I couldn't target with punishment, so I had to target Rafflesia, but then it just doesn't resolve. Like it wouldn't have resolved anyway, even though I could target this, because this also prevents destruction. So like, yeah, regardless, like all of his monsters were staying on the field. But in reality, all I really wanted to try and do there was just get rid of the last back row, which is Torrential Tribute. So now I know the last card remaining is a copy of Traptrix Trap Nightmare. And here I go into the battle phase, and then I go and attack the Rafflesia, but my opponent doesn't actually negate the construct, because this effect is mandatory to destroy a monster. My opponent could have used the Traptrix Trap Nightmare to negate it, but my opponent just lets the Rafflesia just go. Maybe probably reading the fact that I just want this Shaddoll back, and that would have been pretty nice there. But yeah, we just beat over the Sarah. I mean, it was good, at least the fact that I was able to at least destroy this by battle, or rather by the card effect of Construct, since Rafflesia still can be destroyed by card effects. But yeah, we were able to clear the most important parts of the board, and then we were just able to pass from there. So our opponent's going to top deck, and then actually just go into battle phase straight up, and then kill my Dynamiscus. And I'm like, oh wow, we might actually be able to work our way out of this somehow, even though we misplayed really, really badly this game. So we're gonna go for punishment, or rather draw punishment for turn. My opponent is going to flip up the wrong card in standby phase. They're going to go for Ice Dragon's Prison and attempt to target my Entis, but Entis was not properly summoned. So my opponent isn't actually going to be able to get rid of my Construct here. And once my opponent realizes that, my opponent actually just concedes. So messy game one, I'm not going to deny that. That was not very well played on my part, as far as both technical play is concerned and just like the ruling on the Allomeris there. Also just not being aware of the Rafflesia extra text in it. Yeah, these cards have more text than I thought, because I'm so used to Rafflesia just being like, oh, you know, you send a Trap Hole card and you copy its effect. But no, that card has more effects in the actual Traptrix deck, and it definitely is relevant for this particular matchup. So I learned a lot in that game one, so we're not going to make those mistakes, at least hopefully in games 2 and 3. But we're going to move now into game 2, and we're going to look at siding a little bit. So I opt to just go for back row hate. Really, that's all it comes down to. I don't have a great way to stop my opponent from like really popping off, as far as, you know, summoning Sarah. That's like the equivalent of popping off in that deck. So we just go for a very simple side pattern. I side out Torrential Tribute because I just think it's not that impactful going second if my opponent's board is very established, because half of my opponent's things aren't affected by trap effects. So might as well just, you know, not really deal with that too much. Whereas like Strike maybe can do something to stop pushes later on for like the actual monsters that my opponent's trying to use, or you can like stop hand traps perhaps, because I know my opponent's on Ash now. But yeah, not too much to say here. We're just gonna go ahead and move into game 2. But if you guys are enjoying this video, definitely be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new here and want to see more commentary similar to this style. Let's try and hit 7K by the end of the month. But our opening hand going second is going to be Ice Dragon's Prison, Squamata, Nadir Servant Punishment, and Dynamiscus. So quite a good hand. We have Nadir Servant, which is like one of the best cards in the deck, standalone. Obviously, Shaddoll Fusion would be great going second here, but we can't complain too much. My opponent's going to start up with a copy of Mantis being normal summon. That's going to search for a copy of Dionea. Yeah, this is the one that does recycle normal traps, and you'll see this is like actually how I lose this game. So yeah, my opponent's going to go for Sarah, set the Brigandine, activate the Brigandine, use that, and then go for the Sarah. That's going to summon a copy of Mantis. They're going to set a back row and then use Mantis to bounce it, which triggers the Sarah's other effect, and that's going to set Gravediggers from deck. And then my opponent's going to overlay for Rafflesia, and then just pass on this. So we're going to go ahead and draw. We draw an Shaddoll Fusion, which is actually not terrible, but it does kind of conflict with Nadir Servant, so we're going to have to wait in it a little bit. This deck definitely has to play the long game, just with the amount of kind of conflicts there are, just with the Dogmatica cards sometimes. It can be a little bit rough. There's synergy and also just anti-synergy sometimes, depending on how you look at it. But overall, it's definitely still worth playing the Dogmatica package for sure. Servant, we're going to activate, and then that's going to send Opcolon. We're going to search for Ecclesia. And then we activate Opcolon effect. My opponent actually activates Gravedigger's Trap Hole, but notably it's the one in the middle. And I know that actually the one on the left here is also Gravedigger's Trap Hole, because that was the one that was set off Sarah. So my opponent actually gave me free information there. So now that I know this, actually, I decide... Actually, my opponent's going to resolve Sarah first. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. So my opponent's going to go for Dionea and then reset the Gravediggers, and that's going to be important for sure later on. But I decide to actually just normal summon the Ecclesia. I don't special it, because this can negate effects from hand as well. So now that my opponent has a second one, and it's not once per turn anywhere, I decide, I don't want my opponent to just negate this, and I just, to be fair, actually, it doesn't destroy now that I think about it. I actually forgot this doesn't destroy. So, yeah, I probably should have activated it, although to be fair, an extra amount of burn damage wouldn't have been the greatest, especially because I know my opponent has another Gravedigger's Trap Hole now. So it's a little bit precarious. I have to be very mindful of that. But yeah, actually in hindsight, I probably should have done the equation hand, huh? Let me know if you guys would have done it with that knowledge. I'm curious if you guys would have done that play, as far as just trying to, fetch this and just get it out of the way. But we're gonna search for another copy of Punishment here, and then we're just gonna go into battle phase. We know if obviously it can't be a short battle, but we just want to get damage in when we can. Damage is hard to come by sometimes early on in this deck, so we're just gonna set 4 and then pass. And the opponent's gonna draw, and then go for Dionea, and then that's gonna target the Mantis. And here, go ahead and just let my opponent go into the battle phase. I'm thinking here at the start of battle phase. So we're going to activate the S2E11 Shaddoll fusion, which I'm happy to do before having to use this punishment. So we are going to go for a copy of Construct. And then I'm thinking on chain links here because of course my opponent does have the Gravediggers, so I gotta be careful. So we're gonna do Squamata chain link 1 and then Construct chain link 2. And then my opponent's going to do Rafflesia chain link 3 and then send Traptrix Trap Hole Nightmare. So we're gonna get our Construct negated and destroyed, and then we're going to get Wendy into Graveyard. We're going to go Wendy 1, Construct 2, targeting S2E11 Shaddoll Fusion, and then the Construct's going to be negated by the Gravediggers. So we're going to take another 2,000, and then we're going to have the Wendy Resolve that's going to summon Beast. And this has 1,700 defense, which is bigger than all of these monsters. So we're thankful for that, but our opponent does get to trigger Sarah here. And then that's going to go for Mermelio. And then Mermelio is going to target my Dogmatic of Punishment. And I decide if I want to use it or not, because I figured that there's maybe a chance that I actually try and go for a fusion play next turn, but looking back on it, it was unlikely that was going to happen, because how was I really going to be getting a fusion card? So I probably should have just chained the punishment just to try and get more stuff into the graveyard, and then obviously none of these are able to be destroyed, or rather targeted because of the Rafflesia, so it's the same situation as game 1 where I'd have to target this, but it's unaffected by trap effects because it has Xyz material. But I would still be able to send an Entis or an App Clone or a Construct, notably, to add this back, which would have been decent. But I decided just not to go for it. Probably should have, just in hindsight. It would have been a nice 1-for-1. But I think I was thinking a little bit too hard about potential plays I can make on my turn when in reality they were very limited. But my opponent's going to go main phase 2 and actually go for Nightmare Cerberus, and that's going to pitch the Gen Alicia, which I have not seen before. Is this another new card? Because I swear I've not seen these Traptrix cards before. But yeah, this is one that I had to read. I'm like, wow, this card's pretty decent. This card's really good, actually. But yeah, my opponent's going to pop my Beast and then draw 1, and then get trigger Beast, but that gets ashed. So that is unfortunate. My opponent also makes Abyss Dweller, which is really rough, because now I'm like, oh, I want to get rid of it, but I don't want to Dynamiscus it because I want to use Punishment as well to get more resources going. So it's a really awkward scenario for me now, and I'm just in a really, really bad spot. Moment also sets a back row, and I know I also still have to play around the Gravedigger's Trap Hole too, that I know is set still way over here. We do top deck another Nadir Servant, which is a very, very good one, but it's not going to be the greatest here because my opponent, again, does have Dweller to stop whatever I send, essentially. So this is a case where maybe it's it would have been nice to send an Omega or Wind Pegasus, something that would get value later on. But here, of course, we're not playing anything like that, so we're just going to send a dead card, but we add Ecclesia back. And then we're going to normal Ecclesia and then use her effect. And my opponent is going to actually chain the Floodgate Trap Hole. So that gets set, and then we go for the punishment here as well. So my opponent's going to use Sarah and Resolution. That's going to activate to summon a copy of Mermelio. And then that's going to pop my face down Ice Dragon's Prison, which I do chain. We're going to hit the other copy of Mermelio here. Not the most ideal timing to use it, but there's not a whole lot I could have done there. I probably should have actually hit Dionea and then banish either Sarah or Rafflesia. I'm not sure. Actually, yeah, it's really questionable that I did that. Why did I do that? Wait, what? Wait, this made no sense. I actually didn't look back at this game, but yeah, that was really terrible. What the heck? Yeah, that was bad. Why did I do that? That was really terrible. I guess I just didn't realize my opponent had a plant in graveyard. Yeah, I don't know. What was I thinking? I guess I wasn't thinking. I'm sorry. This is not good. But I'm not gonna be too afraid to show these off because everyone makes mistakes. So yeah, that was just not good. Don't do that. We're gonna go ahead and yeah, my opponent's going to move to main phase and then just go into battle phase. But Ecclesia can't be destroyed by battle with any of these three monsters right here. So that is pretty nice. I think my opponent actually forgot about that. So we buy ourselves another turn. Here's a chance where I could have Dynamiscus here, just to get the Dweller out of the game, and then we could just go for punishment on our own turn, and then try and get some things rolling. But I neglect to do that, and it's gonna cost me because I wait a bit too long, and I realize, well, now I'm not really gonna be able to actually capitalize on it because if I like Dynamiscus, he's obviously gonna chain the Dweller, and then I won't be able to use this set punishment, and then I'm just gonna be playing from a turn behind again. So yeah, again, like it's just like not the greatest here in terms of like my own technical play, which is why I said at the beginning, I'm not very good at this deck. I'm just gonna say that outright. But here we go for punishment anyways. I figure better late than never. I could still do the same play where like I have Dynamiscus later down the line to stop something else, and then I have the secondary punishment. And now I have a good card to pitch off the Dynamiscus, which is also decent. My opponent's going to use the Dionea here that was grabbed off the Sarah since I activated normal trap. And then that's going to actually reset the Gravediggers. And now I'm like, oh, well, if I activate literally any graveyard effects, I'm just going to lose the game because I'm at 4K. There's 2 Gravediggers. I just lose. So I don't think it would have mattered even because like if I went for that Dynamiscus play beforehand, then it would have been tough. This game would have been totally different if I just used my Ice Dragon's Fizz different because like this wouldn't have been getting like this resource, but then like the Mammalia could have beaten over the Ecclesia, and so like a lot of different things would have happened. This game would have just been completely different. But yeah, that Ice Dragon's Fizz was terrible. That was really bad. There's not much else to say about that one. But anyways, we're gonna go and try and do what we can here because this Dynea is threatening to kill our Ecclesia. So I try and go for the punishment. We're going to then go for Dynamiscus here and then hit the Cerberus. But of course, my opponent is just going to Gravediggers on my App Clone. So it's Sarah chilling 1 here, Squamata chilling 2, App Clone chilling 3. Of course, the punishment didn't destroy anything because it's the same situation with Ecclesia here. But yeah, my opponent's going to use this as chilling 4, and I send Dragon here. And then my opponent's going to summon a Mantis, and then I do the math, and I'm like, oh, okay, so even if I decline to use this Dragon, because I know, of course, my opponent has the Gravediggers, I just die to 2300 right here. So I'm like, I just lose the game no matter what. So yeah, definitely a lot of back and forth there. Again, very good opportunities for learning because there's a lot of things to kind of unpack there and to dissect. So, these things happen, and you make some really questionable plays sometimes. So, there's not a whole lot to do, but just to own up to it and just be like, I messed up. That's my bad. We'll not do that again next time. It's, a lot easier to be honest when I'm literally sharing this publicly because now I get to make fun of myself and have you guys make fun of me too. But in reality, it's a good learning experience because now that I am like literally commentating over this and actually just actively watching my own plays, I'm like, all right, I'm never going to do that ever again because that's terrible. But I learned a lot about the Traptrix deck in this game for sure because there's a lot of things I just did not know were in this deck to begin with. So we're going to move on to game 3 here. This is going to be our siding pattern. I take out a copy of Shaddoll Fusion going first because I don't want to, again, run into a situation where it's like super dead in my hand. Again, it's arguable I should keep them in just because it's a grindy matchup and my opponent is going to summon Sarah. So it's like it's going to be live, quite a bit. But I decided to just opt for the back row removal, and I put the traps back in. Maybe should have put Torrential back in too, just because like a Torrential on a normal summon Traptrix is like good enough still. But regardless, we're just going to roll with this and see what happens here. So we're gonna move on into game 3 here, and we are gonna be going first. So our opening hand going first is going to be Falco, Hedgehog, Sinister Shadow Games, Harpy's Feather Duster, and Shaddoll Fusion. And I'm like, man, this is again like a situation where it's like, this is not very good. Like I could Shaddoll Fusion, but like I don't think summoning Wind to turn 1's that good. Like I would get some value out of it, but I just don't really think it's great to do that. So I actually just opt to set 2 and pass. And I here I'm thinking like, all right, if my opponent opened at all like a good hand, I'm just going to get blown out here. I thought for sure I just lost. So my opponent actually, even worse off, Gamma Seals me, and I'm like, all right, yeah, now I definitely lost. Because now this won't even get to trigger. My opponent actually reveals that they had 2 Gamma Seal, and this actually has to be in attack position. It says on the card right there. But my opponent actually just tribute summons for a Cypherame Driver, and then goes to battle phase, and here it's like, oh, so my opponent also did not open very well. But that also is not great, because this means that the Shaddoll Fusion is not going to be live. So they beat over the Gamma Seal. I go to use the Shadow Games in my opponent's end phase, and my opponent is going to Ash as the final card, and that is rough for sure, because that is what I needed to get my play started. Because right now the Shaddoll Fusion not able to send from deck, so we are not in a great spot. We do draw Punishment, which is going to delay or be a delayed starter, if you will. But yeah, here we're gonna activate the Feather Duster that gets Judgmented, predictably, not really too surprising. Maybe a little surprising that's in there going second, but you know, it is a grinding matchup after all. So we are going to set Falco, and then we're going to set Punishment, and then we just pass. I'm just hoping my opponent doesn't find anything, but of course my opponent draws the Extravagance, so I'm like, you know, what can you do sometimes? They draw 2, and then they actually just don't summon a Traptrix monster. I'm like, all right, maybe we can do this. We go and flip up Falco, and then use that effect. We're going to set a copy of the Hedgehog in Graveyard. This game was pretty straightforward, honestly. There's not a whole lot either of us could have done here. So we're just going to pass. I decided not to use the Punishment because like I figured there's no point to. I'm just going to like float with the mini Shaddolls until I can make a play. Plus, in the event that I draw a Shaddoll monster like I did here, this fusion would be live, and I don't want to turn that off via Punishment. Again, that conflict you have to be very, very careful of managing very well, that is. We're going to flip a Hedgehog here, and we're going to search for a Reshal Incarnation. Again, this is a card that I think is great in grinding matchups, so I'm going to go for it. And then we go for Shaddoll Fusion, hoping he doesn't have like a way to stop this, and thankfully my opponent doesn't. So we go Wendy Chillink 1, Napclone Chilling 2, targeting itself just to play around Gravediggers. My opponent has the Traptrix Trap Hole Nightmare anyways, which I'm not too upset about because like I was probably just going to crash into the driver regardless. But this does just mean there's another turn where I literally cannot out a 2500 vanilla. And that is kind of embarrassing. But we're going to summon Beast off the Wendy and then go for Napclone and Grave. That gets Gravediggers right there. So now I'm like, all right, well, this definitely stifled my my momentum here, but I'm still not feeling too badly about this. But I do actually end up messing up later, you'll see. So my opponent actually tries to normal summon Gamma, but it actually can't be normal to set. Shouts to the older Drytron combos. So my opponent's just going to go and attack over my Beast. We're going to trigger it, and then we hit, Strike Dragon. We're going to send the Dragon, of course. We can get it back later with like Alkaline, not a big deal that we get rid of it now. And then we're going to Resh, and we bring back Falco, which is fine. But then I do a very weird play. Actually, no, this is actually still wrong. I should have summoned Wendy for sure. Because either Wendy or you could argue maybe the app clones like flip it and crash. Because this like it was just really slow. I was just trying to figure out the way to get like the most amount of monsters possible. And then I just like completely tunnel vision on a really, really dumb play. Yeah, that was not a good play for sure. This is very, very wrong. I think almost anything else would have been better actually. Except maybe Hedgehog. And Dragon. Dragon would have been, yeah. Yeah, that was not a good target off the Incarnation. Honestly, I don't know what I was thinking throughout this entire match. I think I was just like my brain was just not functioning. But that's kind of what happens when you play when you're not operating at full capacity. I don't know. I'm just making excuses at this point. We're going to move on here. So we go for Alkaline, which is another really dumb decision. If I didn't realize it before, I wasn't going to realize it now, where I should have just summoned like literally anything else, mostly Wendy. But it's going to be a turn later that I'm going to have to deal with this driver. Literally, this driver has been on the field the entire game, and it's embarrassing that it's not off the field by now. But yeah, we're going to go and attack into Falco. I don't mind being harsh on myself, by the way, just because it's me, and I know that I can take criticism from both myself and from you guys as long as it's constructive. But yeah, this is like the way that I can, be harsher when I try not to be harsh when it comes to players on like DB rated. This is gonna be a random rant here, so feel free to skip ahead. But yeah, when I like go for the inside DB rated series, or especially when I commentate over the replays for my own tournaments, I tend to be nice to the players as much as possible because again, it's all about like a learning experience. That's the entire motivation behind my channel. So I don't want to, be like just very condescending or things of that nature when I don't have to be. So I just try as much as possible to kind of point out the things that I see, but I'm not gonna like berate people for that because here I am making mistakes out the wazoo, right? So I'm not in a position to act like I'm a perfect player by any means, and when it comes to my own plays, I am perfectly capable of just tearing them apart and being like, wow, this was really not very good. And if it weren't for the fact that I've already been recording for 30 minutes, I wouldn't even be uploading this game. But here we are. So we're just gonna roll with it again. My opponent actually passes. So I'm like, my opponent really must just have the nastiest brick ever. And my opponent actually declines to attack into my app clone. But we draw a copy of Ariel, and here I'm like, all right, we gotta go for game. This game has gone on long enough. So we're just gonna flip up the app clone, no one summon Ariel. We're gonna make a cross sheep. And then we're going to trigger app clone. We're going to add the Wendy and then send it. And then we're going to use Wendy effect. We're going to summon Squamata. And then here we're going to Schism. We're going to banish to summon out app clone. And then trigger the cross sheep. We're going to summon back Wendy. And then we're going to go for Unicorn. And then we're going to go for access code. And we're going to go access and app clone. But we're just going to get met with a Nibiru. And I'm just going to use strike. And that's going to be the end of that. So, yeah, that was like, I'm done with this game. I really should not have been even like, there was just no excuses. It was bad. I'm not going to lie to you guys. And you guys can see for yourself, it was not very pretty. But again, we have to show these off from time to time because, one of the pet peeves that I have with like YouTubing is that like people having the illusion that, or not, viewers having the illusion, but like people pretending to just be like infallible, which I think happens. Obviously, it's like natural to like want to post only your wins ever, and I know it's ironic to say in the fact that I, of course, that won this one somehow. But if you look back in this series, I've lost a couple times. If you want to look at some other episodes, so I'm not afraid to showcase my losses. I want to kind of break the mold, where people are kind of afraid to just show games where they lose. Because like that's important, or games where they win and then just misplay like horribly, like I did here. But this is like another lesson as well, where just because you win a match does not mean that there's nothing to learn from it, or doesn't mean that you play perfectly or anything like that. Because if I came away from this game thinking, "Wow, I played so well," you guys would be ripping into me more than I'm already ripping into myself right here. But yeah, that's just kind of the way things go, and I think it's like really cool to just kind of have DB just as like a way to really actually just go in and dissect the gameplay that you have, because honestly, it's hard to like really think back about your physical real life games, because unless you're recording them, it's gonna be hard to like have a very like just photographic perfect memory of everything that happened. But here, everything's out there, right? Everything was there. You can see the very tiniest details, and that is important. If you want to see my opponent's hand, actually, let's see what it was. It was Parallel C, the last card. Okay, I was wondering actually what that was. But yeah, like you can see everything. Like there's all the information out there. So we are able to kind of just look at this and improve as players. And I think that's like a really important thing to do. But enough of this side tangent here. I've been talking for way too long. I feel like I've been talking more than usual. So I'm going to end the video right here. Thanks guys for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave a like as well as any thoughts or feedback in the comments. Subscribe for more informative Yu-Gi-Oh content. If you want to, you can follow me on all social media platforms or support me via Patreon, TCG Player, all the links in the description as usual. And until next time, I'll catch you in the next video. See you guys.